In the dystopian future, global warming causes the climate to become so chaotic that ocean levels rise and drown big cities like Manhattan, New York, and many others. Hundreds of millions of people face famine, but for the areas that remain unaffected, the governments of the major countries came up with a plan to forbid reproduction for the most part and create conscious artificial beings called robots to help humans regain prosperity. A scientist named Alan Hobby shows a robot named Sheila that is almost human-like but will never rebel for its freedom. But Alan isn't satisfied with Sheila and proposes to take things further using artificial intelligence and create a robot child who will unconditionally love its parents forever. He wants to use this child mechanism to not only monopolize the market but also fulfill the human need for people who can't bear children legally. He gets the license to make this child mecha, and then a year goes by. A married couple, Henry and Monica, visits a hospital to see their son, Martin, who is frozen solid because of an incurable disease. Monica immediately begins to read Martin a poem, so the doctor gets worried and tells Henry that he should help her move on as there's less than zero possibility of getting their son back. So, Henry decides to help her move on and applies for Alan's mecha child, David. He then surprises Monica with their new mecha child. However, Monica doesn't take this in a light way and makes it clear that there isn't going to be a replacement for her son Martin. Henry understands her feelings and promises to return it the next day. But, within that day, Monica begins to grow feelings for the mecha child, David, and decides to have second thoughts. Henry warns her that if she decides to adopt David, she cannot resell him, and if she returns it, Alan's company, Cybertronics, will destroy him. So, Monica finally pities David and decides to test him before signing the adoption contract. Their parenting begins, but Monica remains nervous around David. He keeps following her everywhere, which makes her feel insecure, so she locks him in a closet. But then she realizes that she has gotten too far and finally opens up to him. At the dinner table, David imitates his parents eating and even tries to make them laugh. Monica finally accepts David as her child and uses the protocol that would make him bound to her and eternally love her. Now that David is bound to love her, he starts calling Monica his mommy. After that, Monica's depression goes away and she begins to enjoy herself. David wonders if Monica will die and becomes sad that she will leave him one day. Monica assures him that she will be going nowhere and gives him her real son's toy. One day, Monica receives the good news that her real son, Martin, has finally started to recover, so she brings her back home. Soon after, Martin recovers and begins competing against David. He treats David like a toy and asks him questions that make him question his own existence. Martin purposely makes Monica grow distant from David. Martin keeps provoking him and makes David eat food that breaks him. Still, Martin isn't done yet and he makes David cut Monica's hair, saying that it will make her love him even more. But David accidentally hurts Monica. Similar events happen, and because of Martin, this time Martin's friends attack David, who hides behind Martin to protect himself and accidentally drowns him. Monica starts to believe that David has grown to hate Martin, so she decides to return David back to Cybertronics to disassemble him. But right before entering Cybertronics, Monica can't get herself to destroy David, so she leaves him in the forest nearby with Ted. David realizes that she is leaving him here. He apologizes for breaking himself, for cutting her hair, and for hurting Martin. He promises Monica that he will be a good boy from now on, but Monica has no choice but to leave him, as she believes that David is going to hurt Martin again. She warns David to run far away somewhere with Teddy and to only stay where there are other mechanics, because if the people find him, they will destroy him. David begs and cries, but Monica shows that humans are crueler than robots and leaves him there. On the other side, a woman named Patricia decides to do the ABCs of love with her love-making mechabot, Gigolo Joe. She becomes nervous, thinking this will hurt, but Joe assures her that she will have fun here today and says passionate words to make her excited. After doing the necessary job, Joe goes to another hotel and tells the manager to give him the room keys. Before he goes, the manager reminds him to show his license, as the Flesh Fair agency is here hunting unlicensed mechabots. He thanks him for the reminder and then enters the hotel room after making a few changes to his appearance. Joe tries to seduce this client, but then notices that she is already dead. Her husband appears behind her and reveals that even though Joe is a robot, he felt cheated and that's why he killed her. Joe realizes that he is in trouble and begins to avoid the Flesh Fair agency. Meanwhile, David walks around the forest with Teddy and stumbles upon a garbage truck that throws down destroyed mechabots. Some injured mechanics that were hiding in the forest come there to exchange their broken parts, and Joe too makes his way there. But the Flesh Fair cops appear there suddenly to destroy the mechas. David runs for his life, but more Flesh Fair cops come and surround them from everywhere. David gets captured alongside a mecha nanny, and Joe also gets captured. The good thing is that Teddy manages to escape and goes to the Flesh Fair to find David, where he gets thrown into Lost and Found. With all the new mechabots captured by Flesh Fair, they begin to torture them, so David gets scared and holds onto Joe's hands. A girl finds Teddy and takes him to David. David. The girl tells her father, who is conveniently a big deal in the flesh, fair crew. He sees how real David looks and wonders who would make a child robot. Since his hands are tied, David gets dragged to the arena to be destroyed. Joe tags along with him to protect him. David begs for his life, unlike any other robot. So, that makes the crowd grow sympathetic for him and start causing a ruckus in support of David. Joe uses this opportunity to escape with David and Teddy. We get the big reveal that the scientist Alan's real son was David, so he impatiently looks for him. David tells Joe that his mother has left him because he's not real, and that he believes if he finds the blue fairy from the Pinocchio story, he will become real. Joe, of course, doesn't know about the blue fairy and thinks that David wants to see a real woman named Blue Fairy. So he takes him to the very entertainment city where he used to please women. Joe manipulates some boys to give them a ride to Rouge City, and after, he tells them everything about this entertainment district. Joe tries to show David some places, but David's eye catches a blue angel statue, and so he believes that she's the blue fairy. But Joe tells him that she is not who he is looking for and takes him to Dr. No, who supposedly knows everything in the entire cosmos. Of course, he is a copy of Einstein and a hologram. Anyway, Dr. No asks what they desire to know, so David excitedly asks him about the blue fairy after inserting some cash. With that deposit, David gets to ask 7 questions, but he accidentally chooses a different category and gets the description of the blue fairy flowers. David keeps failing, so he changes the category to fairy tales, and this time he gets closer to his answer. This time Joe combines facts with fairy tales and asks Dr. No how the blue fairy can make a robot into a real boy. Dr. No malfunctions and narrates a riddle that tells him that he must find Dr. Allen at the end of the world, in the lost city of Manhattan. Still, Joe doesn't believe in the blue fairy turning mecha into Orga and tells David that humans only use mechas, and when they get tired, they throw them away, just like Monica did to him. He even adds that mechas are hated by humans because once the world ends, only mechas will live while humans will suffer. Still, David has different views than Joe, so he begins to leave. Joe gets captured by the police for the supposed murder case. David sneaks inside the police vehicle to try and save him and escapes with him for Manhattan to look for Blue Fairy. It's a mecha-restricted area, so they must stay low profile. They scour through the city to find nothing, and that makes Teddy drowsy. David notices something and tells Joe to turn around. They find a statue from Dr. No's riddle and enter a secret facility. They approach the door where the same riddle is in place and happily enter the room with Joe. But then he sees himself sitting in a chair. The white-dressed David introduces himself as the real David, but that makes David think that the other one will try to steal Monica away from him, so he begins to brutally beat up White David. He becomes so violent that Joe runs away. Dr. Allen comes there in time and calms him down. He reveals to David that he used Dr. No to make David come here, but only with good intentions. He tells David that he is the first robot to dream and desire on his own. He finds David remarkable and tells him that he wants to show him his real mothers and fathers. David doesn't wait for them to come and enters a room where he sees that there are dozens of child mechs lifelessly hanging in the room. Even as a robot, David gets creeped out, seeing that he is not special but just a lab experiment. He loses all hope in humans and commits suicide by jumping in the ocean. David sees something underwater, but before he can interact with it, Joe rescues him. He tells Joe about it, so Joe sacrifices himself to give David the time to explore even more. He uses the helicopter as a submarine to look underwater and sees an amusement park that has a Pinocchio section. David follows through and finally finds the blue fairy that he desires. He begins to think that this interaction will make him human, but destiny has something else in mind, and a Ferris wheel falls onto his submarine, trapping him. David continues to pray days after days to the blue fairy so that she can make him real, but she never responded to his prayers. He continued to pray and pray and pray, and that's how 2,000 years passed by. Earth eventually faced thermal death, and of course, every living being, including humans, is extinct. So, the aliens come to explore it. They cut through Manhattan to find something archaeologic. They find David frozen solid inside the helicopter with Teddy. So, the aliens used their powers to unfreeze David, and once he got turned on, he again came close to the blue fairy to pray to her. But this time the fairy breaks, making him realize that she is not special. One of the aliens scans through David's memories and shares them with the others. Everything blacks out, and David reopens his eyes inside Monica's house and starts looking for his mommy. But he can't find her anywhere and only hears whispers calling to him. He slowly approaches the sound and finds the blue fairy. He prays to the blue fairy so that she can make him a real boy. But the blue fairy explains she can do anything but make him a real boy. This is not actually his home and was only built by the aliens to make David happy, since he is the only one who has knowledge of humans, and they have even grown to care for him. They are actually talking to him using the blue fairy, who explains to him that it has been 2,000 years and his mother is no longer living. However, they can remake her if they find anything that matches her DNA. Teddy lady conveniently has a strand of Monica's hair and hands it to David. So David gives it to the blue fairy to get his mommy back. The aliens accept his request and give him what he wishes for most. An alien comes to David and explains to him that they have invented so many things that they can even bring back people's memories, but for only a day, because of some space-time theory. He then gives David approval to see Monica, so David finds her sleeping and sheds tears. David doesn't explain a thing to her and just enjoys the rest of the day together. David celebrates his first birthday party with his mommy and finally becomes satisfied that he lets her go. He also sleeps alongside her, and even though he is a robot, he dreams about being with her forever.
Thank you for watching. It may be easy for you to like and subscribe, but it means the world to us. Please subscribe for more movie recaps.